Good day, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. In today's issue, we're going to cover the ongoing situation between Taiwan and the People's Republic of China and kind of delve in again on why a Chinese full on invasion of Taiwan is, in all probability, unlikely. Now, a military operation could occur, but a full-on invasion where the island of Taiwan is seized, as the media is talking about, a very swift campaign in which we see a Chinese amphibious invasion of Taiwan, is very unlikely. And I'll try to explain. So first and most importantly is the capabilities of the Chinese Navy. And even more important is its amphibious warfare ability. And you have to look at just that. What resources does China have in terms of amphibious operations? And we can look at what they have now and quite possibly what they will look like in the future. Now, the future 5 years from now could look quite a bit different than where we sit today. But right now, the Chinese, the communist Chinese forces, in terms of amphibious warfare capability, can put roughly 20 to 25,000 amphibious assault troops on the island of Taiwan at one time. And frankly, that is probably, depending on how the operation goes, not enough. And I'll try to explain a little bit here. So first, you have to look at those ships, right? So the Chinese have roughly 70 medium amphibious warfare vessels. Now, what is an amphibious warfare vessel? So again, we're looking at 70 of those, and they range from 2,000 to 4,000 tons. Each of these vessels can put anywhere from 10 to 20 vehicles on shore, either by a dry well that floods, and then they release said amphibious assault vehicles offshore. Or in the case of a landing ship tank, these ships basically pull right up onto the beach and release their cargo. Okay, so again, we're looking at about 70 of those. So if you take into that into account in terms of those 70 vessels, and then you look at the 8 large amphibious warfare vessels. Again, these are landing ship docks that have the ability to launch both helicopters and amphibious fighting vehicles, or other assets that can get these vehicles, these tanks, armored fighting vehicles, trucks, what have you, onto shore. And again, some of that may be hovercraft landing, like the LCACs for the U.S. Marines and so forth. But again, you're looking at overall, in terms of both medium and large amphibious warfare vessels, about 20,000 troops that the Chinese can land on the island. And then you have to look at what strategy is the Chinese using to seize control of beaches and ports, because ultimately the Chinese are going to have to secure a port. And we've heard some talk about they could possibly take an invasion fleet and land on beaches on the southeast coast. And again, this would be a opportunistic beach to land a very large element on Taiwan. Now, the problem with this is if you look at it, and you can really start to appreciate the terrain that the Taiwanese have been blessed with in terms of countering an amphibious invasion. So if they were to land, let's say, at this beach, which is roughly 1.5 miles across, so a fairly large beach, so you could put a significant force on that. So, but the beach, the approaches to the beach, once you get off the beach, is jungle and mountains. And again, There has been preparations, obviously, by the Taiwanese to defend these beaches in case of an operation by China. But if China were to land a force on this beach, what next? Okay, ultimately, just staying on this beach is not going to win the war. They're going to have to move and eventually secure a port. So again, a port on this beach and the idea of landing on the southeast portion of the island, again, doesn't get you a port. So you end up in a very, very nasty conflict along these mountain and jungle roads leading out of these beachheads. So again, that probably is not going to work for the Chinese. What they would probably end up trying to do is going after a major port facility on the island itself, if they were going to use that tactic. And again, you're looking at then a more of a hybrid operation where they're attempting to seize both a port facility and beaches at the same time, and they could do both. They could go after a beach and then work their way into a port, or attack the port directly and possibly establish some beachheads to secure a port facility. Because a port facility, again, with only a 20,000 capability, a 20,000 force capability to deploy via amphibious warfare operations, is simply not going to be enough. So they're going to have to utilize their civil capacity, right? They're going to have to use merchant vessels to then transport additional forces to these ports. And again, civilian vessels cannot be used in a traditional amphibious warfare role. They have to utilize existing port facilities in order to take an area and then have that area then be utilized to bring in further forces. So again, if we're looking at a operation where the Chinese use those 70 to 80 medium to large amphibious warfare vessels, again, it becomes very, very challenging, because what is going to meet those 20,000 personnel that they try to put on the island? And then you have to also take into account the issue of losses getting to the island. So what does that look like? How many amphibious warfare vessels and the corresponding troops that are on those vessels, how many of those go to the bottom of the sea as they take that 100-mile journey across? So again, in all likelihood, I would say that you would see a hybrid operation if they chose that operation, and that operation, again, would be incredibly risky. And obviously, as the Chinese were to prepare the invasion fleet, again, this is a classic example where they could take a beach area and they could make a move with special operations forces and possible airborne troops to take a port facility and the beaches near the port facility. But again, they're looking at significant urban warfare, and just a very, very difficult time to take a target such as this. You're looking at my map right now. But most importantly, those forces are going to be seen in their preparation phase. The United States, the Taiwanese are going to see this invasion fleet massing and starting to accumulate and figuring out what exactly they're going to do. So then you would see the reserves of Taiwan start to mobilize. And then again, it's an operation that is so risky and a very, very high degree of failure at that, given that the Chinese just have never conducted an amphibious operation on such a large scale. So I don't think that is actually going to happen. To make matters worse for the Chinese is the question of the outlying islands. So Pengao, this island here, what do the Chinese do with this? Do they saturate it with ballistic missiles and leave it alone? Do they saturate these other islands closer to mainland China that the the Taiwanese have possession of? Do they just leave it alone and then go for just their entire invasion fleet is not spread out in terms of using some of those forces to take these islands, and they just go right for the main island? Or they may have to in fact take these outlying islands. That is what I think they're going to do. I think if they do choose the military solution, they are not going to make an initial move on the main island of Taiwan. Their first target is going to seize these outlying islands, and then they're going to seize Pengao and these islands here. And once they seize these islands can be used as a marshalling and staging area for further operations against the main island of Taiwan. But again, that is probably the best solution in terms of a military operation for the Chinese. And again, I don't think it would take the look again of an all-out amphibious invasion of the main island. I think they would take these outlying islands, and then I think they would induce a siege of the main island of Taiwan. They would blockade it. They would put a military embargo of the island. They would continue to launch ballistic missile strikes and airstrikes, and continue to degrade the island of Taiwan, both military and economic. And if they're able to do that and cut the island off completely and take these outer islands, there's a possibility eventually you could see Taiwan capitulate. Now, the problem with that is, does the United States intervene? And again, we think of the United States intervening with carrier battle groups that could be engaged by, again, these ballistic missiles and long-range cruise missiles and hypersonic missiles that the Chinese possess. And again, I don't think the United States would do that. I think the United States would back off and utilize its very advanced attack nuclear submarines. And those submarines would play havoc upon the Chinese Navy, both in terms of even forces that are attempting to occupy Pengao. Those forces, again, you're looking at an amphibious operation, and again, a fairly significant amphibious operation to seize control of Pengao. And those forces could quite possibly be engaged by U.S. Seawolf class submarines, improved Los Angeles attack subs, and obviously the Virginia class submarine as well. So again, the whole concept of China being able to launch this amphibious operation to seize mainland Taiwan, the Taiwan proper, the main island, is simply something that probably is not going to occur. They don't have that capability yet, and they could put 20,000 troops on the ground via both air and amphibious operation, and those 70 to 80 medium to large amphibious warfare vessels can put about 700 to 1,000 vehicles on the ground. But again, the risk is so high that 20,000 person force could be met by a larger force of attacking Taiwanese, and they could be defeated on the beach, quite possibly. And again, it's just an incredibly risky operation. I don't think the Chinese are willing to take. I think the Chinese are going to try to take Pengao, the islands closer to China, and do a military embargo and blockade of Taiwan while they continue basically a long-term air operation and striking targets on the main island of Taiwan in perpetuity until they capitulate. But the idea of an amphibious operation, especially now, right now, between now and the next 2 years, is just something that I don't believe the Chinese have the capability to actually do. Taiwan is a very powerful nation in terms of both economic power and even military power. Again, I mean, you're looking at a army that is about 100,000 strong, 10,000 Marines, 10,000 military police, a fairly advanced and well-trained Air Force with F-16 Viper multi-role fighter bombers. So again, it would be very difficult. Even just seizing these outer islands, you would anticipate that Taiwan is going to fight, and again, it's just something in terms of China. They just don't have the experience in terms of conducting such a large scale operation. It's going to be very new for them. And especially the concept of large scale amphibious operations. Again, they've just never done it before, and there's not a lot of combat experience in relation to that sort of operation. So again, I would say I would completely rule out an all-out amphibious operation to seize Taiwan. More likely, it would be a long-term blockade with massive ballistic missile strikes and the efforts to win air supremacy over the island while continuing to bombard military and economic targets to induce a possible capitulation. And then again, if the United States intervenes, this could really get out of control pretty quickly. So again, I do not think it's in the best interest of the United States to see Taiwan capitulate and China take over Taiwan. They would obtain massive technology, especially in the chip sector. Obviously, that would then put them at a distinct advantage in terms of world economics, and just in terms of the strategic concept of China seizing control of Taiwan would be really incredible. But again, I do not believe the capability is there as of yet. 5 years in the future, as they continue to build these amphibious helicopter assault carriers, and they actually start to deploy them in relatively high numbers. Could that change the dynamics on the ground? Possibly, but at the same time, we're starting to see Taiwan significantly increase its defense budget and its level of training and competencies because it fears a possible aggressive action by the People's Republic of China. But again, in all probability, what we'll see is, again, a military embargo, a large-scale air operation with ballistic missile operations. You would see them attempt to sink the Taiwanese Navy and seize the outlying islands, and just to force a capitulation through that methodology. But again, an amphibious operation against the main Taiwan island is just something that I don't believe the Chinese have the capability right now. But we're going to continue to monitor the situation, report, and develop more content around this issue. Have a good day, everybody.